The tide is officially turning in British politics. New bombshell polling from YouGov has shown that mass immigration, mass uncontrolled immigration, is now the number one issue for the British people. 50% of voters now say immigration is a top issue for them, a higher percentage than the number who say the economy. This represents the highest level of public concern about immigration since the vote for Brexit back in 2016. And let's be honest, it's not hard to see why. What we are facing here is a quarter of a century of broken promises. Under both Labour and the Tories, from Tony Blair to Boris Johnson, the British people have been lied to, they've been misled, they've been gaslit by the political class in Westminster. Consistently, all the people have ever asked for is lower immigration and control of their own borders. That's it. Less immigration. But the ruling class in this country has refused to listen. They've refused to treat the British people with the respect and the decency they deserve. Instead, the political, cultural and media elites have flooded Britain with seemingly endless amounts of low-skill, low-wage immigration, 90% of which is now coming from outside of Europe. This extreme policy has made us poorer, it's divided our country, and it has increased levels of crime and left the country that we all love unrecognisable, let's be honest. And they've done all this while not paying the costs. It's not the elites in this country who have to navigate the enormous financial price of mass uncontrolled immigration. It's not the elites in this country who have to live with the social and cultural effects of this political project. It is you, the hard-working, tax-paying, law-abiding British people. And it seems that whether the British people vote for more or less immigration, they just get more of it. And it's no wonder that it's yet again the biggest concern of the British public. And we are witnessing now, as a consequence of this refusal on the part of Westminster to listen to the forgotten majority, a new political revolt, the likes of which we've never really seen since the rise of the Labour Party in the early 20th century. The rise of reform represents the most significant assault on the two-party system since the rise of the Labour movement. Now, Keir Starmer was not wrong when he said that this week we have been running an open borders experiment. But the problem is neither he nor his Labour government have a plan to solve it. So Keir Starmer's migration plan will not make any difference whatsoever. We all know this. His new plan is frankly offensive to the British people. Migration will remain in the hundreds of thousands for years to come, exactly what the British people do not want. Even government insiders in the newspapers this week openly admit that what they mean by lowering immigration is returning it to 525,000 a year, which is about 200,000 higher than what it was when the people voted for Brexit, trying to take back control of their borders and their country. I don't know about you, but I think it is absolutely outrageous that this is still going on. Keir Starmer and Labour's plan will do nothing to stop the small boats crisis. That's why the numbers are up nearly 50% on the same time last year, nearly 80% on the same time in 2023. They will not return net migration to the tens of thousands, which is exactly where people want it to be. And it will not put the British people where they belong to be and where they deserve to be, which is first. The British people have already been betrayed at every turn over the last quarter century, and I'm afraid that under this Labour government, they can only expect to be betrayed again. Well, joining me now to discuss all of this is Labour activist and commentator Aisha Ali Khan. Aisha, it is true, is it not, that Labour are completely out of touch with the country when it comes to what is now the number one issue for British voters, mass uncontrolled immigration?
Hi, Matt. First of all, I just want to point out the difference between the second subject that people were concerned about was only 1%. It's 49% for the economy, and obviously, as you mentioned, 50% for immigration. And I do feel that given the recent announcements by Keir Starmer on plans to tackle immigration numbers, obviously, we've only just been in literally not even a full year. We've been in power, and we're dealing with the mess that the Conservatives left behind for 14 years. They did very little to tackle and create a proper system to deal with all the people coming over. And I think, obviously, we can't.
Hang on a minute, Aisha. Labour have removed the Rwanda plan. Labour have decriminalised illegal migration. Labour have removed age checks for illegal migrants. Can we just be clear? It's not simply Labour's complaint that this was all the Conservatives' fault. Labour are exacerbating this crisis because of very real changes the Labour government has made.
Well, Matt, look, the Rwanda plan was never going to work in the first place. It got defeated in all the courts.
You never waited to see if it would work.
The age limit that was removed, the testing, that was something that was never actually put into practice anyway. It was something that had been talked about by the Conservatives and it had been discussed and so on, but it never actually went into practice. But going back to basically the plans that were announced this week and the rhetoric around it, there's lots of worries. Lots of people, obviously myself, I was born here. My parents came here at the invitation of the mill owners to come and work and contribute to the economy. And I myself, I work as a teacher. There's so many more people like myself who contribute in a positive way. So I think what we have to do is acknowledge that immigration is not all bad. People are not just coming here and scamming the system and taking advantage and taking people's homes and jobs and so on. That is simply not happening. Where it is.
Well, it is happening, Aisha. It is happening. I know you have to say that because, of politics and you need to give the nod that actually immigration is good. But let's just be honest for a minute here. Keir Starmer, a Labour Prime Minister, has just conceded to the country, if you read that white paper in detail, he has conceded the mass migration model we have now is not making us richer, it's making us poorer. He has conceded it is eroding living standards. He has conceded it is making the housing crisis worse. And we know already, alongside that it is also driving crime, that foreign nationals are between 2 and 3.5 times more likely to be arrested and convicted for crime. Now, I accept that there are lots of people who come to this country like yourself. I imagine you play by the rules, you pay taxes, you work hard. Nobody in Britain would have a problem with that. But even pro-immigration voices such as yourself must accept that the current model of mass uncontrolled immigration that we have is not working for the hard-working, law-abiding, tax-paying majority in this country.
Matt, I've said this before as well. I've come on this channel so many times and I've said the same thing. We do need to have a viable system that's going to be fair, that's going to be equitable, and that's going to address the issues that we've had for years and years. You mentioned housing, for example. The fact is, we were going to have a housing crisis anyway because we were just not building enough houses over the last 20 plus years. We just were not doing enough. Obviously, you've got to take into account we had the 2008 downturn as well, the sort of recession and so on, and then the rebuilding of our economy. But these are matters. I've just commented on the housing issue. There's other issues as well that. If we had a government that had invested properly, that had helped people, that had not only just helped people that were already in the country, but obviously people that were coming here, that were basically seeking asylum, that were coming here for safety, basically. If we had done this properly, we wouldn't have this issue that we have today. What we have is a bit of a mess, and obviously we want to sort it out. And what Keir Starmer has done is put things into place, put proposals out there, to address issues.
Okay, Aisha, sorry, we've got to move on. Thank you for that. I'm sure viewers out there will be reflecting on whether this is indeed just a bit of a mess. Now, I'm joined by the research director for the Centre for Migration Control, Rob Bates. Rob, you've been ahead of the debate showing what is really happening in this country. Firstly, what do you make of Aisha's comments there, but also Keir Starmer's intervention this week? It is quite an important moment, isn't it, in the debate over migration?
Yeah, so I think we need to realise that the model of mass migration that we have at the moment is unlike anything that this country has ever seen. The pressures it's putting on public services, on the Treasury, is unlike anything that any politician or forecaster would have ever anticipated. Keir Starmer's speech was important in that it has now, I think, drawn a line from the disastrous experiment the Tories launched onto this country. Unfortunately, the white paper itself is an incredibly weak, watered-down model of what actually needs to be put in place.
What's the problem with where Labour are in terms of policy in this paper?
I think the key thing that your viewers need to be taking home is the fact that they are happy, it seems from the publication, to have net migration settle at around 300, 400,000.
Which is higher than it was at the time for Brexit.
Exactly.
This is what people out there really need to know, right? So government insiders in the Times saying they think net migration will settle at 525,000, meaning 525,000 more people coming into the country every year than leaving. It was 300,000 at the time of the vote for Brexit. So I feel like I'm just being constantly misled and gaslit by the Westminster political class.
I think that the problem is between 2019 and 2024, things got so bad under the last Conservative government and Johnson and Patel that people have kind of need to be reminded of what we were fighting for during that Brexit vote, where we wanted things to be going when people consistently voted for immigration to be brought down. It wasn't for 500,000, it wasn't for 300,000, it was for a substantial reduction in those coming into the country.
The academic studies show voters, when they talk about reducing immigration, they want it to be below 100,000 a year. Boris Johnson promised to lower the overall numbers. He promised a high-skill migration policy. We got none of those things. Keir Starmer's now saying, well, actually, if we don't change course, we're going to become an island of strangers. It seems to me as though actually, even though you might be sceptical of Labour's policies, and indeed I am, the mood music on migration, the vibes, the zeitgeist, has fundamentally changed this week. There is an acceptance on both the left and the right. Mass immigration cannot continue. An acceptance, it's making the housing crisis worse. It's driving the economy into the toilet. It seems there's no going back from this, right? That we're in a new era in which actually those of us who have been making the case against mass immigration, we've won the argument.
We are now the mainstream, and that's a very important shift in the terms of debate. Before now, those of us who are trying to argue against the case for mass immigration, whether it be economic, social or cultural, were ostracised in many instances. We were told that we were wrong, that we had understood the data. It's a very important pivot that we have seen, that the Prime Minister has now recognised that, yes, mass migration has driven down quality of life for people. Yes, it has led to an uptick in crime. Yes, it has put pressure on public services. And the fact that the Prime Minister has opened the Pandora's box on that is a very important conversation. But diagnosing the issue is different to actually curing the issue. And I think it's important to distinguish that just because Keir Starmer spoke in strident terms, that does not reflect the actual measures that he has put in place. It is, as you said, just returning us to those pre-COVID, pre-Brexit levels, which were still far too high, and that people were fed up with back then.
So Jacob Rees-Mogg was saying on this show earlier this week that even these changes won't have an impact for at least 18 months. They will certainly not deliver the kind of impact that most people out there are wanting and expecting to see. So what happens, Rob, if the status quo does not change in the short to medium term? Immigration now the number one issue in the country, which is saying something. We're living in the worst cost of living crisis since 1945. I mean, but yet people out there are still saying immigration is the top issue. Reform is number one in the national opinion polls. I mean, what actually happens in this country if Keir Starmer and Labour do not get their arms around this immigration issue?
I think what the voters have indicated with this poll is that they've recognised immigration is upstream of the economy, it's upstream of health. And therefore, if we don't address this fundamentally with the serious reforms that we do need to our immigration system, those other problems will continue to get worse. It'll be harder to get a GP's appointment. You'll continue to see your living standards slide. Infrastructure will continue to be absolutely overburdened. And unless we get this under control, we will not see any improvement in any of those areas. And, you know, the current records that are being anticipated, the current levels that are being anticipated, 525,000, is that if that was to transpire, by 2035, a quarter of the country will be foreign-born and a third of the country will be first or second-generation born migrants. And this is the kind of transformation that we are seeing in the country as a result of mass migration.